January 7, 1948. A decorated World War II pilot is ordered to intercept an unidentified flying object hovering in the skies over Kentucky. Moments later, he vanishes from radar. His plane crashes in a field. The wreckage is found, but the mystery remains. The military scrambles to contain the story. The newspapers run wild, and one question haunts the nation. Witnesses say the object was massive, metallic, hovering motionless, then moving at impossible speeds. What exactly did Captain Thomas F. Mantell die chasing? An incident that changed the trajectory of government secrecy, triggered the launch of Project Sign, and ignited fear across post-war America. This is the full story of the Mantell UFO Incident, an event that marked the first known death of a military pilot during a UFO pursuit. But peace was fragile. The Cold War had begun. The Soviet Union had emerged as a nuclear rival. The Iron Curtain was falling across Europe, and in the skies above the United States, fear took flight. This isn't science fiction. This is history. With sightings of strange lights, flying discs, and unexplained aircraft rising in frequency across the country, the public's imagination was on fire. To understand the impact of the Mantell incident, we have to go back to the state of America in 1948. The Second World War had ended just 3 years earlier. He flew the iconic C-47 Skytrain during the Allied invasion of Normandy, dropping paratroopers into enemy territory on D-Day. His courage earned him the Distinguished Flying Cross. The press was hungry for more stories, the military less so. But the sightings didn't stop. In fact, they were increasing. He was stationed at Standiford Field, now Louisville International Airport, and flew the powerful P-51 Mustang, one of the most advanced fighter planes of its time. He was highly respected by his peers, cool under pressure, and known for being dependable and disciplined. 1948. State Highway Patrol officers near Maysville, Kentucky, reported seeing a strange, large, metallic object moving westward across the sky. It was described as enormous, possibly the size of a house or more. Radar technology, once used to track enemy bombers, was now watching the heavens for something else, something unknown. The term flying saucer had just been coined the year before. After pilot Kenneth Arnold's now famous 1947 sighting over Mount Rainier, the object was not appearing on radar. They needed eyes in the sky, grounded, steady. Witnesses described the object as metallic, dome-shaped, and glowing in the afternoon sun. Not someone prone to flights of fantasy. Reports described it as round, bright, reflective, possibly hovering at high altitude. They didn't know what they were, whether phenomena, secret Soviet technology, or something not of this earth. They described it as a large, circular object, white or silvery in color, hovering motionless in the sky. Their planes weren't equipped with oxygen systems, and going higher would risk unconsciousness. At times, it glowed. At other times, it appeared to move at incredible speed. He reported seeing something in the distance, a bright object, far above them, but couldn't get close enough to identify it. By early 1948, the American military was being overwhelmed by reports of unidentified flying objects. Trained observers used binoculars but couldn't identify it. It wasn't a balloon. Moments later, civilians reported seeing a plane spiral out of the sky. It wasn't a known aircraft. I'm trying to close in for a better look. Mantell's P-51 Mustang, on the other hand, was nearing its operational ceiling. and he had no oxygen supply on board. And it wasn't behaving like anything familiar. The plane had disintegrated upon impact. Debris was scattered across a wide area. Whatever caused the crash wasn't from an explosion or enemy fire. The tail section was sheared off. The fuselage was unrecognizable. By the evening of January 7th, the story was national news. Then came the event that would push the UFO phenomenon into the realm of tragedy. Thomas Francis Mantell Jr. was no amateur pilot. Born on June 30th, 1922, in Franklin, Kentucky, he was the very embodiment of the American wartime hero. Kentucky airmen killed in UFO pursuit, declared another during World War II. Mantell served bravely in the Army Air Forces. A decorated war hero was dead after chasing a UFO. Venus would not have been visible at that time of day in that direction. Many claimed they had seen the object in the sky that day. Some described it as circular and flat. Others said it was shaped like a teardrop or an ice cream cone. For many, this wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a sign. After the war, Mantell returned home to Kentucky and continued flying, this time with the Kentucky Air National Guard. At just 25 years old, Mantell had over 2,000 flight hours. He was also a father and husband. So when Mantell received orders on January 7, 1948, to investigate an unidentified object in the sky, no one could have imagined it would be the last flight of his life. The alert came in around 1:20 p.m. on January 7th. The object was also reportedly seen by civilians in Owensboro, Irvington, and across several counties in the state. At Godman Army Airfield, near Fort Knox, base personnel saw it too. The object was visible from the control tower of Godman Tower, contacted authorities. At that very moment, 4 P-51 Mustangs were already airborne nearby in a routine training mission. Among the pilots was Captain Thomas Mantell. It was 2:45 p.m. when Godman Tower contacted the 4 P-51 Mustangs flying overhead. The lead pilot, Captain Thomas F. Mantell. The tower relayed the situation: an unidentified object had been sighted to the southwest, above and beyond Fort Knox. The pilots were ordered to investigate. As the planes changed course and ascended toward the target, reports from the ground continued. What made this incident different from previous UFO sightings was simple. This one involved military aircraft actively chasing the unknown. At first, the 4 pilots flew together, but as they reached 15,000 feet, 2 of the planes broke off and returned to base. Mantell and 1 other pilot continued the pursuit. The last pilot to fly alongside Mantell would soon turn back to. Mantell kept climbing. He was determined to catch whatever was in the sky that afternoon. At approximately 2:50 p.m., Mantell made his final radio transmission. In a calm voice, he reported, "I see it above and ahead of me." Those were his last known words. According to ground observers, the object continued climbing seemingly unaffected by gravity or atmosphere. At altitudes above 20,000 feet, without supplemental oxygen, pilots are at extreme risk of hypoxia condition that causes confusion, tunnel vision, and eventually unconsciousness. Radar lost contact with Mantell somewhere around 25,000 feet. One eyewitness described it as tumbling like a leaf before disappearing over the horizon. By 3:15 p.m., it was clear. Captain Thomas Mantell had not returned from his mission. Later that afternoon, emergency crews and military recovery teams located the wreckage of Mantell's aircraft. It had crashed in a rural field just outside of Franklin Mantell's own hometown. The scene was harrowing. Mantell's body was found still strapped into the cockpit seat. His wristwatch had stopped at exactly 3:18 p.m., the moment of impact. There were no signs of burns, no bullet holes, no shrapnel wounds. Initial reports from the military suggested Mantell lost consciousness due to lack of oxygen and crashed during an uncontrolled descent. But that explanation didn't sit well with the public or with those who saw the object he was chasing. News of the incident spread like wildfire. Military pilot dies chasing flying saucer. Read one headline. The American public had never seen anything like this before. Across Kentucky and surrounding states, more witnesses came forward. But one thing was consistent. It didn't behave like a balloon or a blimp. It moved too fast or hovered too still, and then, just like that, it vanished. In the days following the crash, the United States Air Force scrambled to explain what had happened. Initially, officials stated that the object was likely the planet Venus, visible in the daylight sky, but that explanation was quickly retracted. Then came the second explanation. Mantell had been chasing a skyhook balloon, a top-secret Navy project involving high-altitude research balloons. These large silver balloons could float at 60,000 feet and reflect sunlight, appearing as bright, motionless disks. It was a plausible theory, but there was a problem. The Skyhook project was classified, so the Air Force couldn't confirm its presence without revealing the existence of a secret program. To this day, there is no conclusive record of a Skyhook balloon being in that part of Kentucky. On January 7, 1948, the Mantell Incident had a profound effect on the U.S. military. Public interest in UFOs surged. Military brass were forced to take reports more seriously, and behind closed doors, internal memos flew fast and furious. Just weeks later, the Air Force launched Project Sign, the first formal government investigation into unidentified flying objects. Its mission: determine if these sightings posed a national security threat and whether they were of extraterrestrial origin. Many consider the Mantell Incident to be the catalyst, the tipping point that convinced the military it could no longer ignore what was being seen in the skies. While the military tried to contain the narrative, eyewitnesses across Kentucky were telling a different story. In total, over 60 civilians and military personnel filed reports that day, describing a bright, metallic object that hovered for extended periods and occasionally darted away at extraordinary speeds. They said it appeared white and without markings, clearly visible for over an hour before vanishing into the distance. Some described the object as circular and flat, while others called it a cone-shaped craft or a silver disc glowing like polished metal. One civilian near Madisonville, Kentucky, described it as big as a house and said it hung in the air like it was tied to the clouds. At Godman Field, several base personnel viewed the object through binoculars. These weren't drunk farmers or imaginative children. These were trained observers, police officers, pilots, and adults seeing something they couldn't explain. And all of them watched as a military aircraft was dispatched and never returned. One of the most enduring explanations offered by the military for the object Mantell chased was the Skyhook balloon. Skyhook was a top-secret U.S. Navy project launched in the late 1940s that used large polyethylene balloons to lift scientific instruments into the upper atmosphere. In fact, project managers later stated they had no launches planned for that area or day. The balloons were huge, often over 100 feet in diameter, reflective, and capable of reaching altitudes of 60,000 to 100,000 feet. Seen from below, in the right lighting conditions, they could appear shiny, motionless, and disc-like. Why hadn't the Air Force been informed by the Navy? Sounds reasonable, right? But something far more suspicious. There's a catch. The Skyhook project was highly classified in 1948, and no records show that a Skyhook was over Kentucky on January 7th, or was the military hiding something? Radio transcripts were unavailable. Autopsy reports were delayed or incomplete. Here are the leading theories, each with their strengths and their problems. This created a credibility problem. If the Air Force claimed Mantell chased a Skyhook but none were present, what did he really see? Worse, if there was a Skyhook balloon and it caused a military fatality. Some suspected this wasn't a case of mistaken identity. Soon after the incident, researchers and journalists trying to understand the Mantell crash began encountering roadblocks. Key documents related to Mantell's mission went missing. Years later, when researchers filed Freedom of Information Act requests, they found many documents either heavily redacted or mysteriously absent. Ufologists began asking, was this just incompetence? Some rumors claimed Mantell's body had been recovered in a condition far worse than reported, mutilated or burned, and that witnesses were threatened to stay silent. No hard evidence supports these claims, but the inconsistencies in the official version only added fuel to the fire. For the first time in U.S. history, people were openly asking whether the government was covering up a UFO encounter that resulted in a pilot's death. To this day, debate continues over what really happened to Thomas Mantell. Theory 1. Hypoxia and human error. Mantell climbed too high without oxygen. He lost consciousness and crashed while chasing a distant object. Most widely accepted by military historians. But this doesn't explain what the object was, or why it was visible for over an hour by trained observers. Theory 2. Skyhook balloon, a large, reflective research balloon, misidentified as a UFO, explains the hovering behavior and lack of radar detection. But no balloon was officially launched in that area or on that date. Theory 3. Secret aircraft, something worth chasing, something that killed a man. Mantell encountered a top-secret aircraft, either American or foreign. His bravery was never in question. He died doing his duty, following orders, pursuing the unknown, with courage and conviction. But as a reminder of the risks taken in pursuit of truth, could explain secrecy and high-altitude flight. No longer just lights in the sky or blurry photos. This was real. This was dangerous. But investigators interviewed witnesses, reconstructed the flight path, and analyzed weather data. Their conclusion, or something else entirely. No records of experimental craft in the area, and no intercept risk justifies the lack of oxygen system. Theory 4. Extraterrestrial craft. Mantell chased a genuine, unknown object of non-human origin. Witness reports describe speeds and maneuvers beyond 1940s tech, but no physical evidence recovered. Purely speculative. Narrator. None of the theories fully explain every part of the incident, which leaves only one certainty. Something was in the sky over Kentucky that day. In the wake of the tragedy, Captain Thomas F. Mantell was hailed as a hero. His death marked a turning point in how America viewed the UFO phenomenon. The Air Force, now under pressure, formalized its efforts to study UFOs through Project Sign, which later evolved into Project Grudge. And finally, the famous Project Blue Book. Mantell's name is etched into UFO history forever, not as a conspiracy. The death of Captain Mantell was more than a tragedy, was a wake-up call. In the months that followed, the U.S. Air Force quietly launched Project Sign, the first official government investigation into unidentified flying objects. Its goal was simple: determine whether UFOs posed a threat to national security, and whether they were real, physical objects, perhaps of Soviet origin. Mantell's crash was the first case studied. Officially, they claimed the object was most likely a skyhook balloon despite no direct evidence of one being present. Unofficially, rumors swirled that early drafts of the report entertained an extraterrestrial hypothesis, though this was later edited out. Even within the military, the debate raged. Was this a tragic accident, or the first fatal encounter with the unknown? Whatever the truth, the Mantell incident had a profound effect on American culture. For the first time, a UFO sighting was linked to the death of a military pilot, and the public noticed. Within months, newspapers ran front-page stories about flying saucers, radio shows debated alien life, movie theaters filled with films like The Day the Earth Stood Still and Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Pop culture seized the moment and never let go. The word UFO became common. Public belief in extraterrestrial life soared. Fear that the skies might not be ours anymore. And deep beneath that enthusiasm was something darker. Fear. Fear that the government wasn't telling the full truth. The Mantell crash became the Roswell of 1948 EAT flashpoint, where conspiracy met tragedy, and reality blurred with myth. They aren't just sci-fi anymore. They're real, and they're being investigated. It accounts for many, but not all, of the observations. In the 21st century, the Mantell UFO incident is still studied, not just by UFO enthusiasts, but by military historians, aeronautical engineers, and cultural researchers. The skyhook theory remains the favored explanation by the U.S. Air Force in recent years. Pilots and scientists have pushed for better documentation of aerial phenomena, a conversation that's lasted over 75 years. With the Pentagon's creation of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and the release of UAP footage by the Navy, public interest has surged again. Modern pilots, armed with better sensors and protocols, are capturing strange objects, some moving in ways that defy known physics. Others believe it was the first real encounter with something beyond human understanding. What Mantell saw may never be conclusively explained. But today's data-driven approach gives us new tools to ask the same question he did: what's in our skies? A balloon, a craft, a ghost of history lost in the wind. But at its core is a man, a son, a husband, a father who gave his life in service of his country. We often talk about the Mantell incident in terms of conspiracy, mystery, and possibility, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the history of unexplained aerial encounters. Captain Thomas Mantell wasn't chasing aliens. He was following orders, investigating a potential threat, doing his job with honor. Drop it in the comments. We read them all. Just out of reach. He didn't get a chance to tell his side of the story. There were no black boxes, no final words, but through his actions, he sparked a movement. For that, he deserves more than speculation. he deserves remembrance. Some say the Mantell UFO incident was a simple misidentification, a tragic outcome of high-altitude pursuit without oxygen. Either way, it happened, and the questions it raised about secrecy, perception, and truths still echo today. In every strange light over the desert, in every military pilot's radar glitch, in every declassified page with redacted lines, we hear the faint roar of a P-51 Mustang chasing something no one could explain. What was in the sky that day in 1948? Maybe the truth is still up there, waiting. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like, subscribe, have your own theory about what Mantell saw, and if you want to explore even deeper, check the links below for full documents, timelines, and exclusive footage. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies.